Hi, Krissa. Can you give us a little bit of background of yourself and what you do?
Sure. I'm Krissa Skogen, and I am a conservation scientist at the Chicago Botanic Garden, and I also teach at Northwestern University. We have a grad program in plant biology and conservation. My research focuses on plant pollinator interactions, and so the part of STEM that I'm in is really in science, ecology, evolutionary biology, and the natural sciences or biological sciences.
Yeah, and then can you give us a little bit of background of what your most recent trip or expedition was?
Sure. So last year, I joined 99 other women representing 33 countries globally. We participated in the largest group of women in STEM to travel to Antarctica together. And this was part of a program called Homeward Bound. And the goal of Homeward Bound is to train 1,000 women over 10 years in leadership training, capabilities, and collaboration to work together to lead for the greater good, and really to provide an opportunity for scientists in all areas of STEM to get to know each other. And so we traveled to Antarctica. The Antarctic expedition was a culmination of a year-long training program, and we traveled together from leaving from Argentina. We were on the trip for 3 weeks, and while we were on the ship, we got to know each other, did a lot of networking, and then participated in leadership training programming every day. And this was a really fantastic experience to be outside of the normal day-to-day things we do in our lives. So to kind of step away from our other responsibilities and do a deep dive in leadership training, learn about the other kinds of science and work that other women are doing and the challenges that they face as well. Some of the challenges are very similar, and some of them are quite different depending on where you are in the world, where you are in your career, and the part of STEM that your field falls under.
Yeah, this is like the geeky part of me, but like, what's Antarctica like?
Oh, it's amazing. So the thing that was a couple things that were really striking to me. It's very quiet. Obviously, there are no airplanes flying over really, and so the sounds you hear are the sounds that. I guess if you spend any time outside in the winter in the middle of nowhere, it's kind of like that. The landscape is tremendously beautiful and simple. Ice. You can see this. The picture in my background is from one of the nights. Ice, water, and some landforms, maybe mountains sticking out under the snow. And the biology is really fascinating too. So we were there in spring. Their springs were going into our winter in the northern hemisphere. A lot of breeding colonies of penguins, mating pairs of seals, saw a lot of humpback whales and killer whales and those sorts of things. So it's pretty incredible to see the biodiversity up front and in person. I'll also add that a really important component of the Homeward Bound program is to both learn and share with scientific peers and the general public what we can about fighting global climate change. And so that's one of the reasons why the participants travel to Antarctica together to see the impacts of climate change up front and personally. And so some of the things that we witnessed, so Antarctica is one of the few places in the globe where climate change is happening and warming is happening at a higher rate. And so there's more obviously ice melting and changes to the weather patterns, but also displacement of specific kinds of penguin species that are evolved to do well under colder climates, are being moved to more southern areas where it's colder because places where they've occurred in the past are warming. So we saw some of that firsthand too.
So cool.
Yeah, that sounds so amazing. So, did you always know that you wanted to be in the STEM field? And what about in your career path? What led you to go to Antarctica and study climate change? Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll answer that first question first. I was thinking about this, and I think I always kind of knew I wanted to go into a STEM field, but when I was in high school, I had no idea what that actually meant in reality.
Mm.
Um, I knew I loved my biology classes. I really enjoyed spending time outside in the natural world. But I don't think if someone asked me when I was in high school if I thought that I would go on to get a PhD, if I would say, yeah, like that's the path for me. I don't even think I knew that that was a thing. Um, and so I guess the things that got me to where I am from there were an interest in the biological sciences and being outside, and then taking advantage of opportunities that came up along the way. So in high school, I was in Science Olympiad and in our outdoor club. When I went to college, I knew I wanted to major in biology, and I knew I wanted to get some research experience. So I asked the professor who was teaching one of the classes that I really enjoyed if she had any opportunities in her lab. And she did. And I ended up working in her lab for the next 3 years. And that opportunity, to do a deep dive with someone working on research, I think was probably one of the more foundational opportunities for me. I got a better handle on what the scientific process was, how you go from making observations to designing experiments to test hypotheses, and then kind of following the whole thing through to the end and presenting my research either within the biology department or I actually ended up going to 2 different national science conferences and giving posters too. And so without that experience, I don't think I would have known that the kind of job that I have now was even a thing. And I guess after that, I knew that I might want to go to grad school after I finished undergrad, but I wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do next. So I took a couple of years off and did a couple of paid internships. And that really helped me get more experience in areas that covered topics that I thought I might be interested in, but I didn't have any experience with them, right? And so I think that's probably one of the pieces of advice that I give to students really at any stage. There's something that you're interested in or excited about. See if you can find an opportunity where you can do a deeper dive in that area to find out if you really like it or if you just like hearing about it and reading about it, right? Because some of those things, like we try it and you're like, oh, this is what's involved. This is so cool. I want to do more of this. And other times you learn a little bit more and you realize, oh, I had no idea it was like this, or that this is the kind of work that I would be doing. And I am happy for someone else to do it, right? And so sometimes I really think trying things and finding out that it's not really what you like or really exciting to you can be just as important as finding the things that you really love. And it sort of helps you feel really confident in the path that you pursue, rather than just taking, maybe the easy way out. Try some things that are different, a little further afield. They may be, the path you go down. And if they're not, at least you tried, right? And you learn things either way. So, yeah. That was a long answer. What was the second part of your question?
Oh, well, I was just asking how your career led to you going to Antarctica, but I think you covered most of it, but that sounds amazing. I mean, I know personally as a high school student, I'm still confused and unsure, but thank you so much for the advice. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I'll add, so I went to college, I took a couple years off, I went to grad school and got a PhD, and I've been in my current job for 12 years. So I'm 42. I'm no problem telling anybody how old I am. And I think something that's really, when I look back on what I've done between high school and now, that hopefully will help you guys is I'm always looking to learn new things and try new things. And there's no one job or one project that any person's going to stick with forever. And so one of the reasons why I applied to the Homeward Bound program, and I don't think I mentioned this, but my cohort was the 4th of 10 that went through the program, the year-long program, and then went to Antarctica. And one of the reasons why I applied was that I am, I've been in my career for 12 to 15 years, maybe a little longer, depending on when it starts. And there's still a lot of things that I don't know, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that you learn on the job. But as you move along in your career, the more advanced sort of leadership roles or positions that have a lot more responsibility, there aren't necessarily opportunities to get that training to succeed in those areas. And so I applied to the program because I was really looking to learn more and further develop that skill set. And so I guess I mentioned that to you as a hopeful message, in that you may not ever really know exactly what you're going to do. And you need to try different things to see what resonates with you, what gets you excited, and what works. And then as you go, do what you can to get an additional skill set to help you go even further.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting and insightful. The next thing we wanted to ask was just outside of just the acronym, what does STEAM mean to you?
So I think of STEAM or STEM, and I know some folks go with STEAM and others with STEM. I think what it means to me, or what the combined, I guess, disciplines are to me, are ways to know things about the world and how things work. I really like including arts because in my experience, to do well in any of the STEM fields, you need to come from a perspective of having an open mind and being creative problem solving, and being open to new ideas and different perspectives, and thinking through problems in ways that people haven't necessarily done in the past. And so personally, I guess the trying to understand how things work and generate new information and new knowledge is really exciting to me. And one of the reasons why I pursued a career in science. And it's the thing that gets me excited to go to work, or not, to work from home, and to explore new projects, either with students or colleagues. The idea that we're going to answer questions that don't have answers yet, I think, is really exciting. And the potential to be the person or part of the team who uncovers unknown things, I think, is really exciting, and like, frankly, like a really fun way to spend your time.
Yeah. Just kind of a follow-up to that is like being in those fields and learning all of that. What does it mean to be not only a person in those fields, but to be a woman in it?
Yeah, so, I was thinking about this, and the different disciplines within the sciences have different challenges, right? And so In the biological sciences, in ecology and evolutionary biology, there are more women than there are in other parts of STEM. However, that doesn't, like, we're not at like 50% representation. It's just better than other areas. And so I guess in my career, there have been times when I've noticed that there aren't many women in the room or on a project or involved or who are working in a certain area. And I've also noticed when there are, right? So it's something that I'm always paying attention to. And because of that, it's important to me that I'm helping people who are coming behind me, so that they don't face some of the challenges or hardships that I've experienced, or that other people, that, you know, challenges that I know exist in pursuing a career in STEM, and being successful too, right? Like, you can pursue, but maybe not succeed because there are barriers. And some of those things are known, and some of them are becoming uncovered as we move forward. And so being a woman in STEM, to me, is really the combination of the work of generating knowledge or understanding how the world works, but also using the position that I'm in to help other people pursue their dreams and their interests as well. And I don't think that's unique to women necessarily, but it's something that I've looked for in mentors and opportunities in my career. And so I know it's something that other people are thinking about too.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then you were also saying that it's not quite 50-50, that there's still a gender gap present in even the science fields that you're working in.
Yep.
So how do you see that play a role in your day-to-day work-related activities, like meetings and stuff like that? And then how do you strive to overcome these adversities in your field? And would you say anything to young women striving to do the same?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really great questions. So personally, you know, as you move forward in your life and your career, things change, right? So you go from living with your parents, living on your own, and then, you know, some people will partner up with someone and maybe start a family. And so depending on where you are in your life, you're going to face different challenges and pressures on your time. And you know, I have 2 young kids, and I would say some of the challenges that I have with balancing my time or trying to figure out how to meet their needs, as well as my professional needs, are pretty similar in some, not in every way, of course, but in some ways to people who are caring for maybe their parents as they're getting older too, right? So a lot of those, I guess, caregiving roles historically and currently fall on the shoulders of women disproportionately than they do to men. And so there are a number of things that can be put in place to support people who have dependents, regardless of what their age is. And so some institutions provide opportunities for maybe childcare, dependent care, while you have a meeting or you're traveling or something like that. So that stuff's becoming more common. I think in the day-to-day, one of the things that's been really helpful to me, and I guess more than helpful, essential to me being able to do what I do in my professional life, is having a really great and supportive partner. And so my husband's also a scientist, and he's very familiar with the demands on one's time. and the need to maybe, go do field work for a couple of weeks at a time, but also the day-to-day stuff, right? So, we both get called if one of our kids is sick, and we both have to decide who's going to be the person to go to, like, not do the rest of their day and to go pick them up or whatever it is. And so having someone who both understands the challenges that women and underrepresented groups face in STEM fields, but also commits to having to, like, experience some of the sacrifices too, right? Has been really important to me being able to do what I've been able to do. And I don't think, like, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, you have someone to help you out at home. It's huge. But I don't think I would have understood just how important that would be until I started to live it. And I will say the time in my career where it's been most difficult was probably right after I had both kids, because you're on maternity leave. Sometimes you're working during your maternity leave, or you're kind of working. That's tricky. And then if you choose to nurse your babies, even when you go back to work, you have to spend a lot of time pumping and doing the things you need to do so that you can continue to nurse them while you're apart. And so there are some things that cannot be done by the partner, right? And I guess those are just a couple of examples of things that have been challenging to maintaining a strong research program, being productive when things in your life change, and areas that disproportionately impact women too, right? Certainly so much has been written about this, about ways in which women and other underrepresented groups in STEM fields are held back. And, we could probably talk about that for an entire week. But yeah, I don't know if you want me to address anything in particular.
Yeah, so piggybacking off that, obviously, I think that, as you were talking about, balancing all parts of your life is really difficult, and especially as a woman. And so what advice would you give to young females or even high school students, who many are not moms at this point, for how to be able to pursue their careers and their dreams, but also maintain a social life and, start a family and all of that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, I think the phrase that people often use is work-life balance, right? So you work, but whatever you do in your life is really important, whether that's you have a family or not, right? Like, having downtime and a personal life is really important to your mental health, to your identity, to being someone who's more than just a person who's working, right? And however you spend your personal time, I think one of the things that's really important to keep in mind is that there's only so much time in a day, and there's only so much time in a week, month, like, pick your time frame. And trying to understand that you can't do everything you want at the same time and do it all well, right? I'm sure you guys all have experience with this. I think finals time is a perfect example. You wish you could spend an entire week studying for every single exam, but you can't. There's just too much happening all at the same time. And so something, and the like work-life balance, some people call it work-life integration. So that's the idea that, like, you're not trying to balance these two things, but you're trying to integrate them into each other, because you're a whole person who has a personal life and a professional life. They're not separate things that are necessarily at odds. And I think in addition to keeping in mind that you can't do everything all at the same time, is trying to figure out be strategic about what you say yes to, so that you're not spreading yourself too thin. And I guess the flip side of that is becoming more comfortable saying no. So there are some opportunities that may come up that you would love to take part in or participate in. But if you've got other things going on in your life that are more important at that time, it's going to be probably in your best interest to say no to certain things. But keep in mind that saying no doesn't mean that you can never do something, or that the opportunity won't present itself, maybe in a different way at some point in the future. But I think when I think back, that's one of the lessons that I've learned many times over, is the importance of evaluating what you're spending your time on, and whether or not the things that you're giving your time are your priorities, because you only have so much time. And learning how to say no is really hard, I think, especially for women. We often get asked to do a lot of things. We want to be a team player or participate or be involved in certain things. But taking a step back and trying to evaluate, what is the best use of your time, both in the short term and the long term, can be really helpful in determining, what you do. Because certainly you want to avoid burnout, but taking too much on all at the same time can lead to that at some point down the road.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the advice today. You've given us lots of great advice and shared amazing stories. Do you have any final piece of advice for young women who are entering the STEM field about anything in general?
Sure, yeah. So I think one of the most important things that women in STEM can do is find mentors. And a mentor may be someone, natural fit, or someone people usually think of as a teacher or a professor or a supervisor. And those mentors are really important. But also keep in mind that really important mentors can also include people who are just a couple of steps further along the path you're interested in than where you're at the moment, right? So a mentor can be someone who is 2 or 3 years older than you, or someone who's in college right now and you're in high school, or once you're in college, who's, someone who's got a job in the field that you want to pursue. And connecting with those folks and finding out, what kinds of advice they can give you, because they've learned something along the way, can really help you figure out what might work for you. And I guess the other thing I would say is ask the same question of many people. Don't just ask 1 or 2 people a question, especially if what you're trying to make a decision about is really important. The more people that you talk to about a certain topic, the better, because you'll hear some common refrains, which will tell you what, the common experience has been, but you'll also hear unique perspectives. And some of those unique perspectives may be things that really resonate with you, and maybe pieces of information that will be foundational to whether or not you do something or don't do something. And I guess I would also say, you'll hear themes that will highlight good information, and you'll hear themes that highlight bad information, right? And I would say, you're asking people for advice, always evaluate how you would feel about whatever it is that you're talking about, right? So don't just take someone else's word for it, but something might be a game changer or a negative experience for some folks that may not bother you, right? And so just keep in mind always, like, who you are and what you want, what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with, and stay true to yourself. But I think if you can talk to a lot of people about something, you'll have a better handle on the experience that most people have, but also you can take that information to determine whether or not you want to move forward or not. The other thing I would say is When people talk about their career path, they hit the highlights. I've told you I went to college, I did some internships, I got a PhD, now I have a job. I didn't tell you all the things that sucked along the way. I didn't tell you the things that didn't work out. I didn't tell you the failures. I didn't tell you the hardships. And those things are just as important to your future as the things that worked out. And so I think talking to people about the parts that are hard or the challenges that they've faced is really important, because everyone faces challenges along the way. And it can be really helpful to know what they might be, right? So you can anticipate them, but also to recognize that everyone stumbles along the way. There's no one path. There's no path that just goes up and up and up and everything keeps getting better, right? And so having frank conversations about the setbacks and challenges people have faced will provide you with the perspective and context for both what you can expect, but when things don't go well, you know that you're not alone.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much
You're
for
welcome.
sharing your story and giving us all of that incredible advice. We are so grateful to have been able to speak with you. And yeah, just on behalf of the entire GirlCon team, thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much. And I should have said this at the beginning. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. And I'm so inspired and thrilled by everything you guys are doing. It's really fantastic, and you're making a huge difference in people's lives. So thank you for all of the work that you guys are doing. It's so important and needed and very impressive. So thanks for reaching out to me and including me. And I'm super excited to see how things go.
Well, thank
Thank
you. Have a
you.
good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.